Okay, since 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 we were talking about Midian and everything else, this week's parasha we'll mention the war of Midian and the Jews, and of course after the war, Moshe had commended the people to take all of the metal utensils and put them by the fire, and after that purify them with water. So the Gemara in Avodah Zarah in Daf Ayin Hey Amud Bet learns from that Moshe Rabbeinu ordered them to kasher, or to purify, should I say, the utensils in which they use with water as an addition, or put them into the fire. So the Gemara learns from that there is a chovah, there is an obligation to tovel utensils that were bought from the goy, and as the Gemara says over there in the Yerushalmi, also in Masechet Avodah Zarah and Daf Hey Mishnah Vav over there, it says, "Lifi sheyatzu mitumat anochri v'nichnesu lekdushat Yisrael." It's not only a matter of whether you cooked or not cooked kosher or non-kosher ingredients in the pots, even if they were completely brand new, there's something symbolic about it that you transfer by immersing them in the mikveh from the spiritual impurity of the goy to the holiness of Am Yisrael. Talking about that should be Le'ilui Nishmat Yamin ben Avraham, Lehavdil ben Achayim Hametim, the refuah shlema of Margalit bat Ida, and to the refuah shlema of Yitzchak ben Geula Victoria, and to the refuah shlema of the child Yehuda Chai ben Leah. The Rambam in Perik, in Ma'alachot Asorot, Ma'achalot Asorot, Perik Yud Zayin Halacha Gimel, and the Sheiltot, the Geonim, in Matot Kuf Lamed Zayin, or Paskin Lehalacha, that in case of a man that did not tovel, immersed in the mikveh, his utensil, there is an isur, there's a prohibition to eat and drink from those utensils. And this is the psak of the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah in Yoreh De'ah Kuf Chaf and Chet and Tet Zayin. Unlike the Or Zarua in Siman Samech Aleph and the Reed in Avodah Zarah Ayin Hey Amud Bet, that say that it's mutar. We'll see exactly what's the nafkamina between those two opposing ideas or thoughts. However, this is of course if they cooked in a non toveled utensils. The Tosfot wrote over there in the Bura Matchi Vechulam and the Rosh in Hey Lamed Vav that the food that was cooked into that was not ne'asar be'achila, it's not asur be'achila, and this is how the Ramah is posek as well. In other words, you could still eat that food. But I want to deal more on the halachot of Tevilat Keilim, and of course, in the question that comes out, that question number one is, am I allowed to, for example, to eat in a restaurant or in a hotel or any place like this, of that sort, that they did not tovel their dishes? And question number two, am I allowed to eat in the house of a friend, relative, and so on and so forth, when I know for sure that he did not tovel his utensils? So before we go with that, we need to see which utensils need tevilah. What does need to be tevilah? So let's go by categories. if we're going to talk about clay even, these are made out of stone, earthenware, etz, wood, and glass, as it says from the pasuk on the Torah that we have in this week's parasha, Lamed Aleph Chavbet, only metal utensils need a Tevilah, and as the Torah says, Ach et zahav, kesef, choshet, barzel, bdil, oferet, which is gold, silver, copper, iron, tin, or tin or pewter, and lead. However, the Gemara in Avodah Zarah over there in Ayin Hey Amud Bet holds that also klei zchuchit, glass utensils, need Tevilah. As the Gemara says, Rabbi Yitzchak ben Yosef Zaban Mana de Marda me'oved kochabim. Rabbi Yitzchak bought a kli, an earthenware, from a goy, and he wanted to tovel it. Amar lo hu Rabbanan veRabbi Yaakov Shemo, that rabbi says, Ledidi mefar shela mineh de Rabbi Yochanan. He says, according to what Rabbi Yochanan had explained to me, right, that I need to tovel this. And the klei matachot, of course, that we talk about in the Torah, and we only tovel klei matachot, right? That's what we need to do. It's not earthenware. So, Amar Rav Ashi hani klei zchuchit, ho'il v'chin ishtabru, yesh lahem takana, kekli matachot damu. Since if they break, you could fix them, so therefore they possess the same quality as metal, and because of that, you need to tovel it. However, midaoraita, it will be only those types of metals, and we'll see if it's other types of metals, but we'll see. It seems like only metals. In other words, since I can make it again as a clay, so I need to tovel it again. It will be an interesting question, of course, which is beyond the scope of what we're doing now, is if, for example, I had a kli from glass, and it broke, and now I collected it, and I melted it, and I made it again into a kli, of course, if it would need Tevilah or not need Tevilah. And of course, it will have to be who made it, and so on and so forth. Not everybody's going to do that, but just for the people at the Alma, it has to do basically with who owns it and who made it into a clay. Rashi over there says, and some other poskim says, since there is a doubt if it's considered kekli barzel shechiva Torah, if it's considered to be like a metal or utensil that the Torah obligates us in Tevilah, and you can look also in Isur veheter klal nun chet nun. So Chachamim commanded us to tovel klei zchuchit with the bracha over there. And the klei even or cheres, on the other hand, which is stoneware, earthenware, or cheres means what? Clay. To that matter would also fall under the category of China, right? And to that matter will also be Keilim chad pe'amiyim, what we call it. It's like one-time utensils, like aluminum pans or anything like this you throw away. According to that opinion, lo tzrichim tevilah bichlal. There is a great argument regarding China or bone China, if they need tevilah or all. Let's not get into this, but it would seem that it is not. One of the reasons, many people are tovel them. Of course, you cannot tovel them with a bracha. However, many people don't tovel it because, especially for Sfaradim, that would use klei zchuchit, glass, for both basar and chalav, of course, after they were thoroughly washed, because of the svara that the glass does not observe, right? Mashrek Shari does not observe, it just washes everything out. I don't think that there would be anyone who will take a china and wash it and use it for Pesach and regular year days as well, to use it. But let's not get into that matter now. So since I could do that, so therefore they say it doesn't need Tevilah at all. However, there is a big chiluk, big machloket, difference, should I say, between iron and glass, that since glass, most of poskim will mechayev that midoraita, and for example, there will be the Rambam, Tosfot, the Shulchan Aruch over there, as we mentioned in Kuf Chaf and Yudalid, that it does not differentiate as the Rambam, what it would seem from the Rambam, what the Rambam says, the Tovelim will klei zchuchit, according to most poskim, it will be midarabanan. Among them is going to be Sefer HaYashar, Siman Samech Zayin, then Oda Yehuda, Yored Kuf Mumbet, and which is posek not like the Ma'amar Mordechai. So that's the difference between glass and, of course, it's going to be short, but glass and metal. But how about clay plastic, regular plastic? I mean, one would say that it seems that according to the Svara of Rashi, that since I could reuse it, and today we're very big about recycle, since I could reuse it, right, there would be a reason to tovel plastic as well, and some, like, if I'm not mistaken, the Minchat Yitzchak and Chelik Gimel Ayin Vav requires to do that. Of course, it will be toveling without a bracha. Most people, most poskim, lemaaseh, are not poskim like that, and they hold that there's no obligation to tovel plastic because it is considered on the same category of klei even she'enam tzrichim tevilah. Some opinions hold because that's where it comes from. It comes from plastic, comes from basically petroleum, it comes from the ground, so it's like din of klei even, and nobody will think to use that as well. And you can look at the Tzitz Eliezer Chelek Zayin Lamed Zayin. Or, for another reason, is because Chazal were made only on klei zchuchit, on glass, and not on plastic. And that is the Sefer of Rabbi Eliezer Melamed. It's called Melamed Leho'il Yored De'ah Bet Memtet. Over there, if you find the Sefer in America, you can look into that. So what will be the nafka mina in terms of the obligation of Tovel? So before we said that there is a difference between Keilim, vessels midaoraita, and then vessels that the obligation is to Tovel it from the Rabbanan, to differentiate the different things. However, that there is enough kamina that we have to, that that will come up between whether it's Rabbanan or whether it's midaoraita. For example, can I send a minor to Tovel Keilim for me? If we are talking about a vessel that the obligation is midaoraita, again in Shulchan Aruch, Kuf Chaf, Yored De'ah, Kuf Chaf, Lacha Yudaled. So therefore, he paskin over there that you cannot send a katan, a minor, to tovel the kli that is obligated midaoraita. However, if it's kli miderabanan, if it's a vessel that the requirement to tovel it is rabbinical, you could, if you want to, you could send a minor to tovel it. Or, for example, what will be the din if there is a safek, a doubt whether they tovel this vessel or not? So kli barzel, something that's made out of metal, that there is a safek if they tovel it or they didn't tovel it, right? So since it's going to be mideoraita, right? Safek mideoraita, lechumra, exactly. However, if it's a glass, you don't have to tovel it, b'makom safek. Right, because that's Safek Derabanan Lekula. And this is, by the way, the psak of Rav Shlomo Auerbach in Sefer Minchat Shlomo, Chelek Bet Samech Vav, and the Minchat Yitzchak Chelef Aleph, Siman Mem Dalet. However, Rav Moshe Feinstein in Igrot Moshe Chelek Gimel, Siman Dalet, held that there is an obligation to tovel a kli zchuchit like that without a bracha. Why? Because you could easily find out whether it was tovel or not tovel, so therefore it's not considered to be really a full safek. So tovel it without a bracha. However, since it's known that people, he knows that people were not going to look into it, they're going to investigate whether we're tovel or not tovel, So therefore he was made the gzera that it needs to be tovel without a bracha. Even though, which is a tremendous chidush, even though that mi'ikar adin, since it's a safek, so you don't have to tovel it, he says because of, it's really not a real safek, because you could find out. So therefore, because people are just lazy, so therefore he was mechayev people to tovel that over there. The Chazon Ish and Yoredei Lamed Zayin paskin that you need to tovel a kles chuchit, and he brings few reasons for that as well, of course in the place that there is a doubt. Now let's talk about kles seuda, food, vessels that we use for food. So there is a special discussion in Halachot Keilim regarding that, and we don't just tovel it, as we said earlier, because there is something dirty in it or because something not kosher was cooked for that. As we said earlier, the actual transition from ownership from a non-Jew to a Jew will require Tevilat, and then already we're talking on things that have tremendous spiritual applications, and we don't really pay attention to those things. Unfortunately, the accumulated damage of spiritual blemishes is so great that if we only would have been able to recognize that, we will be very, very careful. It will be almost like the accumulated damage of a person that, let's say, for example, has been smoking for a long time. Okay? You would not realize the danger or the harm that, let's say, for example, smoking will cause you on the first cigarette or the first, you keep on doing it. However, 30, 40 years down the road, it's an accumulated damage, and sometimes it's just too late. The same thing with those little things. So anything that goes into the territory of spiritual implications, Tumah and Tahara, and I'm talking about Tumah and Tahara because Tumah and Tahara is not something tangible that you can actually feel, unless you, of course, on such a higher level, but most people can't. You can feel, you can touch, you can smell, and so on and so forth. It's not something like that. So therefore, the result of that will be through your neshama. One has to be very, very careful on that. So of course, according to this, you're not going to be able to eat from a kli that wasn't tovel. I mean, one would argue that, let's say, for example, that nothing had to do just with food items. Let's say, for example, if I buy a car from a goy, I should probably take it into the mikveh also. Of course, that's not the case. Or sofa, that's not the case. Of course, I would argue because if you tell me it has nothing to do with what is balua, what is being observed by the vessel, it's just because of tumnah ta'ara. Therefore, anything should be like that. The Gemara over there asked this question, of course, and the Gemara rejected that, and it says, Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba bar Avua, afilu kelim chadashim b'mashma, right? Deha yeshanim v'libnam kechadashu da'amu, v'afilu hachi b'ayit vila, even new vessels that I bought from a non-Jew, I need to tovel. Why? Because even vessels in which I was melaben, I koshered them, and even put them by the fire, that still requires tevilah. And of course, the question will be, if I change the order, if I tovel it and then kosher it, right? Is that okay? Lechatchila, one should kosher it first and then tovel it. Main reason for that is because if I tovel without koshering, I might actually come to use it and I'm going to have a problem. The Gemara says over there, Matkif le Rav Sheshat, Yachi. So Rav Sheshat attacked that opinion, and it says, if so, afilu zuzah desar balename, even pants or shirt that I buy. So Amale Kle Seuda Amorim B'Parasha. So he answered him, no, only what it says in the parasha, in our parasha, that you need to tovel, that's what you tovel. You don't need to tovel anything else. In other words, you don't need to tovel your sofa, or your BMW, or your Armani suit that you bought. Of course, you have to check it for shatnez, but you don't have to tovel that, because it's not mentioned. So from that we learned that only vessels that are used for a seudah, that are using for the purpose of a meal, whether it's preparing or serving, that come in contact with the food itself need tevilah, and not necessarily also any vessels that I buy from the goy needs tevilah. So therefore, as we said before, if you bought a car, you don't need to. And if I bought something for storage, that is done for storage, let's say I have mason jars that are only used for storage, I don't use for cooking, so it's not considered to be klei seudah, so I would not have to tovel that as well. And this is the psak of the Shulchan Aruch, as well as we said over there. There are many other questions about what is considered to be klei seudah or not. Whether, for example, if I bought, let me argument's sake, tomato sauce and I decided to reuse the jar, do I need to tovel it, do not need to tovel it, and so on and so forth, but that's beyond the scope of what we're doing here. That also brings us to the discussion of the din which the Bet Yosef brings about klei schora shelo nitbelu. Let's say, for example, you have a store, you are a retailer, and you're selling plates and pots. You need to tovel that as well. So the Bet Yosef in Kuf Chav Chet writes in the name of his Rav Mahari Birav that a Jewish merchant that bought vessels from a goy to sell does not need to tovel them, right? And one could have said that a goy that bought vessels from a goy for business, right? If he sold it to another Jew, you don't have to do it. You don't have to tovel it. Why? Because it wasn't required tevilah by the first one. So maybe the whole din of tevilah was removed from that altogether, right? So therefore, one would think that you don't have to tovel it, because the first Jew that owns it did not have to tovel it. The halacha is not like that. The Hagaot Asheri, over there it says, "Belekachol lachtoch velo tzurchei seudah," when you took it to cut, but not for the process of food. So some achronim understood from that vessels that in a restaurant do not require tevilah. Why? Because the owner of the restaurant uses them for business. He doesn't use them for personal usage. And this is the psak of Rav Shlomo Kluger in Tuftam Vadat Alachat Echsher Keilim Siman Chav Bet, and Rav Ovadia in Yechavedat Daled Mem Daled, and so on and so forth. However, the Lashon of the Darkei Tshuva in Yoreh De'ah Kuf Chaf Ayin explains that the minhag of merchants in this place, that they did not tovel their vessels, it could be also that what they're doing in their places as well. You know what they're selling when they're selling. It says what they call mei mineral, mineral water, that they have a well that takes sour water, whatever it is, and they take hundreds of vessels like this every single day, and they sell it to cities, and nobody ever thought to question whether they need to tovel it or not. In other words, because and he says שהרי בית יוסף דיבר ביהודי שכדי קונה כלים מגוי על מנת למכור אותם לאיש אחר, that a Jew buys vessels from a goy to sell it for another person, ולא שהוא משתמש בהם להאכיל אנשים. So therefore it's allowed. In other words, if I am a Jew, then I buy containers or jars from a non-Jew, and I fill up with tomato paste and I sell it, of course I don't need to sell it. Why? Because the whole purpose of the jar is for business. It's not for personal usage. Based on that, some of those opinions said, well, therefore the din will be the same for a restaurant, because all he's doing that he's serving it on a plate. So, but you come in there for the food. You're not coming like this. And what the Torah refers to is only when you use it for your own personal usage. However, of course, we have to be questioned on this heter, and you can look further into the Shach and the Taz and the Ben Ish Chai that held that dishes like that also would require tevilah. And Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach in Mechat Shlomo Tanina Siman Samechet held that vessels in a restaurant are not considered to be klei seudah, But anyway, he was matter there to tovel this, to use it without tovel, and his claim is that anything that Chachamim were asked to use a kli shaul, right, and that is basically what you do in a restaurant. You're not buying the plate. You're not buying the plate. You are borrowing the plate from the person. You give it back to him. So therefore, it doesn't require tevilah. This is only because of the possibility that allows to the soed litvol et hakli. But in the place that the person, the consumer, does not have a way to tovel that vessel, he is allowed to tovel it to eat with that tovel. So therefore, in a restaurant or a hotel, they don't allow you to tovel their vessels. So because of that, and you just borrowing so they could serve the food, you could eat without toveling. So therefore, you could use it without a toveling. And his svara is based on the fact that there is isur aseh to eat in a kli lo tavul, and by tovel it, it's not really yours, so therefore you can eat it, and so on and so forth. And this is not really, again, the place to extend it, but that's an idea that you will get in other places. Again, this is a case of a restaurant, that's a case of a hotel, but lechatchila, you should, all catering to that matter, you're going to a wedding and so on and so on, but lechatchila, you should know that this is only a heter b'di'evet. Lechatchila, even those places are makpid to tovel their vessels, so you could eat there without any safek, without any doubt. There would be people that they know that if it's, say like this, you want me to rely on isur, let's say for example meat and something like this, there's isur dam and chelev and maybe karet inside and so on and so forth, and you want me to rely to you on this, and yet you're not makpid on something so easy as toveling, so guess what, I'm not going to eat there altogether. So because of that, people, owners of restaurants, and they go to tovel as well. However, if not, you can. However, there are people who are not allowing to eat food in a restaurant that is not tovel. Amongst them, it's the Chazon Ish, the Sefer HaKashut, Perek Dalet Zayin, the Levushe Mordechai, Yud Dalet Pei Gimel. And this is what Rav Shmuel Eliyahu says in the name of his father, Rav Shalom Rav Mordechai Eliyahu. And according to this shita, a person who goes to, let's say, a hotel or eats in a restaurant needs to check beforehand the level of kashrut of this place, and if it's tovel or not tovel. And if they're not tovel, they hold that you cannot eat there. You cannot eat there. Rav Moshe Feinstein in Igrot Moshe, we are almost done. The Rav Moshe Feinstein in Igrot Moshe, Yoredea Gimel Chavbet, defines between food that you need the vessel to eat with, to food that you don't need to have a plate. For example, if it's soup, then without the bowl you can't eat the soup. Right, so in a case like this, you cannot use a kli that is not tavul. That the other food, for example, that you can eat even without a plate, you can eat. For example, a piece of chicken, right? You can take a piece of chicken, you can eat like this. You don't need to have a plate for that. They can serve it to you on a piece of paper, and you can just eat like this, right? In Europe and some other places in the world, when for example, they serve fish and chips, and they used to take some paper, make it into a cone, put it inside the cone, and just eat it like this. You can see that you don't eat it. Or ice cream, to that matter. You can eat ice cream in a cone. You don't need to have a plate for that. So in a case like this, of Moshe Feinstein is matter to eat where there is food that you cannot eat without a plate. You are not allowed to eat in a place of that that didn't over. Now, what happens when you go, if you go, for example, to your friend, and that's a private person, and you know that your friend or family, to that matter, eats in a non-tovel, what's the matter? Sorry? Eats in a non-tovel vessel. Are you allowed to eat in this place or not? So, of course, all the poskim that we mentioned earlier that says that you're not allowed to eat in a restaurant in a non-tovel, when the vessels are not tovels, would absolutely answer also in a private home, even more so on a person that did not tovel his vessels. However, even some of the poskim that allowed you to eat in a restaurant when you know that the vessel is not oval, did not allow you, were not giving a heter to eat in the same case in a private home or in a private setting of a person. And however, it's important to mention that at the time I told you Rav Eliezer Melamed brought in the name of Rav Mordechai Eliyahu that, for example, you're allowed to drink tea, even though he said beforehand that you can't, even in a restaurant. However, he says you're allowed to drink tea or coffee in a non-tovel glass vessel on a person who is not shomer kashrut, even though he's not, because that will be there will be a totally different ballgame in terms of what serves inside and so on and so forth. However, you should know that this is only in glass, and this is only bishat adchak. It's not lechatchila, and it's only in glass because this is midirabanan. So take all these opinions. Rav Mordechai Eliyahu says you could, but only tea, coffee, but not a meal, and so on and so forth. That the chiyuv will be midoraita, or something that was cooked in a pot that you know for sure that it's not tovel. So yes, the food might be kosher altogether. The food might be kosher. It might be a kosher cow or beef. Not all cows are kosher, only if they were shechted, right? However, the vessels were not kosher, so you can't eat it. The vessel itself is not kosher. Why do you mean it's not kosher? It's not kosher because it's not toveled. So in a private setting, they were not matir to eat like that. And so even though we saw before that they were matir to eat in a restaurant, however, over there, it's all goes on the definition of whether it's considered to be klei seuda or not klei seuda. And in a private setting, it's different. You know, it's a klei seuda. You have to make sure it's tovel. And this is, by the way, what the Rav Ovadia was matir, to do so in a restaurant, but in a private home he was aser. Again, it's in Yochaveh Da'at, if you want to look, Yochaveh Da'at, Chelek Daled, Halacha Mem Daled over there, and it says, HaMetareach bebeito shel chavero, he who stays in the house of his friend, and he knows that his friend did not tovel the vessels, which require Tevilat, asur lo le'echol ve'lishtot bekelav, ad sheyat bilam. You're not allowed to eat until he's tovel. Why? The main reason why the individual person bought them is for eating and drinking and not to make business with it, to serve the food. It's like in a restaurant, right? So therefore you have to tovel. And by the way, this is the opinion of the Chatam Sofer in Chidushim LeYoreh De'ah in Siman, over there, Siman Kuf Chaf. However, there are very, very few poskim. There were matir, and we said earlier, the Svarav of Zarman Orbach, when a person eats in a place that he could not tovel, so therefore he's allowed to eat in a kli that is not tovel. He cannot tovel it. There's no way I can tovel it, so he's allowed to eat so. However, bishat adchak, and according to that Svara, there will be also possible to do so in a private setting, and because of that, he is pasking to be mekil. However, he brings that the chatchila, a person should be careful not to bring himself to that situation altogether. So it's like shat adchak of shat adchak. Why? Because if you could prevent from going there, you don't have to put yourself in all of kind of like uncomfortable situation that's not going to be shat adchak. Because shat adchak will be that you didn't know, and somebody tells you, oh, by the way, I didn't tovel my vessels. Okay, what am I to do now? There's nothing for me to eat. Unless I'm stuck somewhere, nothing for me to eat, so I have to eat. However, if you know that this person is not toveled, and you go there, it's not necessarily called shat adchak. Because who said you have to go there? You understand? And that is a very, very big inyan to remember. However, Rav Yaakov Ariel in Sefer Ohala Shel Torah Chelek Aleph Yutet was paskin to be matir bishat adchak, to count or to rely on the earlier svarot that a guest does not have to tovel the kilim that he eats them, and the chovah is really on the person who serves them, not on the person who eats that. therefore there will be the difference in that, if you're in a situation like this. However, lechatchila, you're better off that you don't get yourself into such situation to begin with. And again, Rabotai, this is something that a person needs to be very, very careful with things like this. As I said to you before, all these things, it's not necessarily just kashrut. Of course, it's a halacha, and we're bound to this halacha whether we like it or we don't like it. There's no I like or don't like in halacha. That's the halacha. That's what you got to do. If you don't like it, when you go up to Shammai after 120 years, put your request. If you come down in a Gilgul, most likely you would come in a Gilgul because of that. Ask not to become a Jew, and then we'll see how much you regret that. But you should really pay attention to these things. When there is something to tovel, go b'simcha, be eager to fulfill this mitzvah. It's very important to do so. It will really help your neshama tremendously. And that in return would create a place of internal purity that your neshama would not want to. If you feel that you are lazy in mitzvot, or you're lazy in this particular mitzvah, I would tell you, look very carefully. Most likely you have some untotaled vessels in your home that you've been doing, because it's impossible for a Jew to be lazy for the mitzvah unless there is a klippah that hovers him on that matter as well. Again, this is Leilui Nishmat, my dear friend Yamin ben Avraham, תהיה נשמתו צורה בצורה חיים, and all the others should have להבדיל, should have רפואה שלמה במהרה, and הקדוש ברוך הוא should have רחמים on all of us, and will pour on us holy water and pure water to purify us, and נראה במידת משיח צדקנו במהרה בימינו. Amen.